Welcome to Sunday self-care session number 3. We are talking about defining ourselves today. So today is our third Sunday self-care session. Super excited to continue our conversation. I had to push it last week because I have other things going on in my life that just were not letting me prepare appropriately. I was not able to prepare appropriately, and I really don't like that feeling. I'm pretty good at winging things, but I really don't like the feeling of feeling scattered and not knowing what I'm doing, especially something like this that I feel is important and impactful in our day-to-day lives. I don't want to just throw things out of my mouth just to do something. So I postponed, and it was definitely the right decision. I was sad to not be doing it and continuing, but I was also grateful that I wasn't overbooking myself, overextending myself. I did not have the time. I just didn't have the time, and I definitely did not have the energy. So I have that space to redefine what my calendar looks like and redefine what all I'm doing with my time and my energy. And so it's great to be able to take that. That's something that, in the context of this, it's something that I'm not always great at, letting something go or rescheduling or redefining what my schedule looks like or where I'm going to spend my resources. I think I've said before, I'm a recovering perfectionist. I want everything to be just so, particularly if I say something, I want it to always be that way. I want things to stay very concrete, and it's a learning for me to say that it's not always best when things are concrete. So a little bit of self-care in there by postponing last week. So this week we're picking up from our Respect Ourselves session. Our first session was Know Yourself. So we talked a lot about kind of a self-audit or just a self-check-in. Self-inventory is the language we used. Pretty much just checking in with ourselves, all aspect of ourselves, kind of in the here and now, and also ourselves on a larger scale, or overall generally who we are. And then in respecting ourselves, we talked more about taking that knowledge that we had discovered that we already know. So in the first week, we talked about knowing ourselves, going over our values. I actually am blanking on the other things. We talked about, going over our values, kind of what we want, how we're feeling, where we are at in our story, and how we want to move forward, redefine, ground down, really dig your heels into what that is, whatever that looks like for you. That was a self-inventory, knowing ourselves week. And then the second week was respecting ourselves. So taking that knowledge and starting to apply it to the way that we live our lives. And what that looks like with the respect aspect is laying boundaries, asking for the things that we need, viewing ourselves as beings worthy of respect, and recognizing all the things that we know about ourselves, that we should cherish those things, that we should have gratitude for those things, that we should really foster and care for those things about ourselves. And that can look totally different according to who you are. So I've said in both sessions, I'm not here to say self-care is a list of all these things. I'm here to talk about what is it for you? What is it for me to care for ourselves? And what is the foundation that we're building that practice on? So sometimes it feels kind of intangible, and I think that's okay. I think there's a beauty in the messiness, people say the messy middle, in the uncertainty, in the ability to have the space where things are able to be shaped by individuals, where things are not black and white. We're not pigeonholing ourselves. We're not taking labels and putting our own little identity in them or collecting labels. This is really about knowing who we are and living a life that is built on that truth. So respect was one aspect. And this week I'm talking about defining ourselves, which firstly, I want to say, I don't think that any of these are really linear. I don't think that this is like a first you do this and then you do this. I do think knowledge is more primary in this whole process, but I don't think it's really, sorry, I'm getting a thing. I don't think it's really a situation where like this, and then this, and then this, and then this. So though we're progressing now to defining ourselves, I think you can kind of define yourself and respect yourself and define yourself and respect yourself and do other aspects of building our self-care practice. And they don't really have to be like a process. It's not super linear, I don't think. So that being said, I was thinking about, okay, so now we know we've done our self-inventory, or we have good tools and prompts to do a self-inventory when we need. And we've talked about respecting ourselves, laying our boundaries, making our asks, and speaking our truths. So what kind of follows? So while I said it's linear, I was thinking, what follows? And I think part of self-care that is absolutely necessary, especially around talking about respect and our value sets, is saying the kind of people that we want to be. So this looks like beginning to prioritize our focuses, beginning to prioritize our actions, taking accountability for our actions, looking at how we spend our time, looking at how we choose to care for our mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual selves, and how those align, how those practices, those care practices, align with our values. This is a time, this is a cultural time we find ourselves in where there is so much that is for sale. There's so much content and language and information and research around things that we can do for ourselves that make us feel better, or that are kind of splurgy or fashionable, very femme. And I don't think that's really what we need when we're talking about self-care, which is saying that's really not going to make me any money, which is fine, because I think it's true. I think what we're looking for in this moment really is ways to strip away the things that we don't need and fully align and fully clarify on our lives and what we want to fill our lives with and what we want to make our lives be and be for. So I think this define yourself section is really about what do I want to be, and how do I take everything that I know and the way that I'm living my life currently and align it. How do I come home to what I want to be as a person? And so I do think a large part of taking care of ourselves is giving ourselves the language, creating the metaphors, painting the picture, telling the story of who we are as individuals and the lives that we're living, and what that looks like on the ground. Okay, so in line with that, I think we have to talk a lot about prioritization. I think that this is a work in progress, this defining ourselves. I have this tendency, I already kind of touched on it. I like things that are cemented. I like things that like stay the same and never change. And like, I want to name who I am and like never change it. And that's not really true. We've talked about this too. Like, humans are evolutionary beings. We change, we evolve, at a cellular level, mentally, physically, the way our bodies are operating on a chemical level, like all these things change constantly. And so it follows that who we are and the lives that we're living they're going to shift. So it is a work in progress to define ourselves. And this is not super, I mean, you can make it really routinized. This can be like your yearly thing that you do where you like check in, you do the inventory, you like check in on your values, you like, redefine your brand as a person, which actually I think is a pretty helpful thing to do. Knowing values and mission and color schemes. I'm getting weird now, but you get my point. These things shift and change, and it's really great to check in. So it's not like we're gonna, sit and write in our journal, this is the person I am, and it'll never change. Okay, so it's a work in progress. It's okay. And I think the other portion of that is, even though it does change, it it's still super valuable to do the work and to be really committed to the work of defining where we're at in our lives, to naming our chapter, to recognizing what we're valuing, to recognize what we're prioritizing. So even though it's going to shift, being committed to it, being aware of it, is what's going to help us build prioritization practices, self-care practices that are going to move us forward into the life that we're envisioning, into the life that we are living, to make it better, or whatever the word is that you want to say, and to further us where we want to be. And then we'll kind of outgrow the space that we've defined, the space that we've built, the space that we're caring for ourselves in. Okay, so it shifts, it changes, and that's good. So what the work of defining ourselves looks like. I think there's a lot of ways that we can do this. And honestly, like I jotted down a lot of different ideas, but I think the beauty of it is you can be really creative with it in your own space, in your own mind, in your own life. Different ways that we define ourselves can be talking about what we are passionate about, can be talking about what we believe in and how our beliefs align with our values, or if they don't. And this is pretty common. There are lots of ways that our values and our beliefs can be misaligned, and I see it in myself, I see it in others. It's a thing that happens, and so that's a great one to check in on. Other ways to define ourselves, my priorities are, so what we're prioritizing. My sacred spaces are, what is sacred to us, what's kind of like our holy land, to take that analogy. I think that's good to know. So those are just a few ways that we can talk about defining who we are. And off of all of those things are going to be spurred actions. Actions are going to be launched off of those things. That's where we're gonna move from, and where we're gonna decide what we're gonna do with our time. The impetuses for the things that we're gonna do day to day. So that's a couple ways that I thought of defining yourself. If you have other ways, please feel free to share them here. Yeah, comment below with your ideas of ways that you define who you are and the way that you live your life. Another little thing I'm going to insert here before I get too far ahead and I forget to say it. In my reading of self-care, something that I came across, don't remember where I found it, was talking about self-care as not indulgences or fads of things that we do to take care of our bodies or the things that we eat. But self-care is really about discipline. And I totally agree with that. I think that's like exactly the thing I've been thinking about. It's really about how can we consistently take care of ourselves. So, and this kind of tacks on to what I was talking about even though things shift and change, it's really valuable to dig into this defining process. Though we shift and change, we do still need to practice consistency and commitment to these selves that we're creating and defining, and to know and to what we know and understand about ourselves and how that drives the way that we care for ourselves. So I've kind of already said it, but I wanted to say it again just to kind of drive it home. Consistency, commitment to yourself is so powerful. It's so life-changing. And this is where people kind of bump up against that, but self-care is selfish, because these commitment and consistency keys really mean that we have to daily be thinking about ourselves, daily be thinking about the ways that we're going to function, the ways that we're going to be in the world, and with ourselves and with our relationships. So, but it's really not, because it's really not selfish, because if we really want to be the people that we want to be and show up in the world with consistency, with integrity, and taking care of functioning humans, then it takes that consistency and commitment, and it's really, really not selfish. It really, really isn't. I think we have this expectation of others, at least I have this expectation of others, that they function well in society, that they have integrity, that they know who they are. And in order for them to do that, they have to take care of themselves. They have to think about themselves consistently and with commitment, the same that I do. And so when I'm talking to myself and think about it, I have to say, Victoria, if you expect this of others, then you should definitely be expecting it of yourself, correct? And this is not all expectations go back and forth, but in terms of, basic humanity, yeah, they go back and forth, at least for me. That's my value set and my belief that aligns with the value set. Okay, so with all of that being said, I do have some prompts. The first prompt that I have for this work of defining ourselves is, what are you passionate about? If you had one thing to focus on for the next year, what would it be? And this can be really macro, or it can be more micro. In goals setting, it's well known that you want to have a SMART goal, specific, measured, achievable, realistic, and timely. And that is so helpful. So, SMART goal, Google the acronym if you don't remember, or if you didn't write it in your notes. And so think about that for a second. What are you passionate about? And if you had one thing to focus on for the next year, what would it be? Prompt number 1. And again, make this what you want it. I don't want to put my, this isn't for me. Like, you're not checking in with me about it. You can, if you'd like to share what you're passionate about, you can. And if this language is not helpful to you, I was watching a TED Talk. Her name is Ashley Stahl, and she was talking about following what feels good. And I think that this is very similar. So if there's something that you consistently just feel so good in a space, and you just want to do that with your time, then write it down, because I don't know how feeling like a superstar and passionate are that far apart. Okay. Prompt number 2, what do you currently prioritize? What priorities do you want to add? And what can you remove from the current list to make space for the new things you want to add? So again, that prompt is, what do you currently prioritize with your time? If you're going to look at the big chunks of your day, and sometimes this is hard to know. Sometimes we have these days where we're like, where did my time go? What was I doing? I finally started using planners. I used planners in college, and I was just amazing at my time. And then between age 22 and 30, I just didn't, because whatever. I don't know what I was thinking. Anyways, planner life is the best life. And it has helped me see what I'm doing with my time. It has helped me articulate things I want to be doing with my time. And it has helped me remove the things I don't want to be doing with my time, and recognize, okay, maybe there are good things that I'm not getting to, but if I'm getting to the top things, great. So prioritization, it helps so much when you write it down. Okay, and maybe that's not your way. Maybe you have a different way, and you're like, no, I don't want to hear it. That's totally fine. Listen to your best self talking. Now, if you're just being proud, I'm telling you, planners are amazing, or just lists or journals or bullet journals or whatever the thing is. Use that resource and really connect with the ways that you're spending your time. What a resource that we have, time that we never get back. It goes so quickly. Okay, prompt number 3. What are ways that you can keep joy forefront in your mind, heart, body? And what are ways that you can create happiness daily? I think that this is kind of a random question, and I myself am like, where does this fit in, Victoria? But really where I think it fits in is when we know where our joy is and when we can feel happiness daily. That I think usually is connected to the things we want to prioritize and the things we're passionate about, or that feel good. And so this is just another way to help us identify what those things are and fortify it, really put energy behind it and focus on it, and bring clarification and alignment to our life. So what are ways that you can keep joy forefront in your mind, heart, body? They can be small. And what are ways that you can create happiness daily? I'll give an example of something that I do. I do this on and off, and when I'm not doing it, I just think like you're such an idiot. Oh gosh, I try not to talk to myself like that too much, too often, but it happens. Um, so one thing that brings me joy is when I wake up and my coffee is made. I don't always set my coffee, and this isn't like the pinnacle of self care, but it's a little thing that I think points to a mindset. And when I am doing it, when I am setting my coffee maker, I'm always thinking, oh, you're doing so good for tomorrow's Victoria. And like, isn't that what it's all about? Is thinking about what do I need in the future to like function? Who do I want to be in the future? What I need in the future is caffeine to function, and who I want to be in the morning is someone who is patient and has a little bit of extra time and is grateful for a thing. And making my coffee at night with the programmer checks all those boxes. So that's prompt number 3. Prompt number 4, if you were going to give an elevator pitch on yourself, what would you say? That's the prompt. Make it honest and call on your self-confidence, call on your self-respect, and call on your values. Speak your truth. So you've got 2 minutes to introduce yourself to someone who you want them to know you at your core. The best, like the truest version of you. What's your elevator pitch on yourself? And see where that takes you. Maybe you have to rewrite it a couple of times. So those are the prompts, guys. That's pretty much it. That's what I've got to say. Define yourself. Name who you want to be. Infuse your values all up into it. And just like carry on with your bad self. And it's not perfect. It's not a linear process. You're going to have to do it again and again and again. You're going to get confused. Like, Lord knows, I'm confused sometimes, probably more often than not. I mean, this is hard business being humans. But this is something I've been thinking a lot about. I'm really passionate about it. I think I'm starting to see a lot of this kind of language, and it's really encouraging to me. There are a lot of great resources. One resource I did want to share, I am not a paid partner or anything. I read this book by Kate Northrup. It's called Do Less, and it is so good. And even if you're not into this, women attach to this more quickly because the language and the structure is very feminine, but it's also for men too if they want to like follow along at least with the do less theory. So even if it follows the menstrual cycle or the moon cycle. And so even if you're like not super into that, the way she talks about prioritization, the way she talks about spending your time and focusing your energy was so helpful to me and really freeing in a lot of ways. So that's a great resource. And that's pretty much it. And I'm really looking forward to finishing up this series with you guys next week. Have a great day. Thank you guys so much. Talk soon. And this really bad habit of playing with my hair and cool as the pants with my hair in my face.